Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we are positive, daring, and different. Golden sands, balmy breezes, and rippling emerald seas. A perfect description of Sri Lankan beaches. But today, we take you to one of the country's most secluded beachfronts, the Thalpe Rock Pool Beach. These magnificent pools are cut out from coral reef, done 50 years ago to soak coconut husks. So choose your rock pool, float around all day, and enjoy the killer view. Later on in the show, we have Sarah Kabir on the Great Divide, KDV Manga on the DDR, and Darshikirti Sena on a 52-year-old legacy. A major thank you to our amazing partners on the show, SriLanka Live, CDB, and The Daily Morning. Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Subscribe and follow if you like our show.
You can now start a CDB iDeposit digital fixed deposit and experience a range of special benefits from CDB.
We now take a quick look at the week that was on CDB Snapshot. Good news to start off. Sri Lanka's inflation eases to 12% on higher base effects year on year. Food inflation slows to 4.1%. Sri Lanka's imports grow in May for the first time since February 2022 to 1.46 billion US dollars. Tourist arrivals topped the 100,000 mark in June, the first in 4 years in the month of June. NASA scientists are currently in Sri Lanka conducting research related to alleged similarities in stones found in Sri Lanka to those on Mars. The Sri Lankan women's cricket team record a historic ODI series win against New Zealand, and Chamari Atapattu becomes number 1 in the ICC Women's ODI batting rankings. Apple Inc. is now officially worth $3 trillion US dollars, the only company to ever reach that milestone. A microscopic handbag, barely visible to the eye, is sold for over 63,000 US dollars. A mayor in Mexico marries a crocodile in a ceremony dating back to pre-Hispanic times.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. SriLanka Life.
Welcome to SriLanka Life News Capsule. There's been much discourse, armchair discussions included, on Sri Lanka's domestic debt restructuring plan. Last week, the central bank set about a plan for domestic debt optimization, as restructuring foreign debt alone will not be sufficient to reach the gross financing need target of 13%. If there is no DDO, the government would have to make sharp fiscal adjustments, which of course means a significant burden on people and business. Now, that's definitely not an option at this point. Independent policy and political analyst KD Vimanga joined me in the studio for some clarity. Welcome, Vimanga. Good to have you on the show once again.
Thank you. Pleasure to be back.
Hot topic for last week, DDR, DDO. While most of the narrative pre-DDR was a speculation how banks and other financial intermediaries will be impacted, the domestic debt optimization actually excluded these from the overall restructuring exercise.
As analysts, what we can say is they've probably looked at the risks, and they've probably figured that the kind of risks you will experience doing a strong, hard domestic debt restructuring would be detrimental to the financial sector, the banking sector. So they would have considered and calculated all that and come up with the current framework. It is a light DDR, and we've seen the markets reacting very positively. And also, this has been supported by some stabilization. So the current framework will take some time to get implemented. But for now, I think the markets are reacting very positively to this light DDO.
Would this actually help our situation?
Most specifically in the short term, what we will see is interest rates falling, which is very good in both the medium to the long term, because what will happen is with a steep decrease in interest rates, we will see economic activity recovering in the economy, and also possibly growth towards the next 2 quarters and then going forward. What we need to be very careful here is that DDR or DDO is just one part of the spectrum. The government needs to now change gears. You will only achieve these targets if you have growth. And you need to achieve a target of about 5 to 6% economic growth going forward if this current framework is going to be successful. And I think that has to be the priority. And to do that, you need to do your structural reforms, your SOE reforms. These have been at the, going on the back gear. Now you need to move on, turbocharge and get these reforms done if you want to maintain this momentum and, achieve a sense of stability.
What are the key takeaways from the DDR?
This supports a growth narrative, a growth prospect for the economy. I think the financial sector for now is stable. We will see credit turning positive, hopefully towards the next quarter. So I think those are the three key main takeaways. And the most important thing is there is a lot of positive prospects for growth.
Time for a quick sketch of the stock, oil and gold markets this week. July began on a positive note for the Colombo stock market. The All Share Price Index moved up by more than 8%, with healthy turnover levels on news that government debt restructuring would not affect the banking sector and expectations of lower interest rates. A global economic slowdown and possible further interest rate increases from the US Federal Reserve kept oil prices stable at close to $71 per barrel, still close to one-year lows. Gold prices continue to weaken this week and is heading towards $1,920 per ounce. With over 1,000 children diagnosed with cancer in Sri Lanka each year and 7 out of 10 of these being from low-income families, the launch of Sri Lanka's first pediatric palliative care centre, Suwa Arana, is surely a boon to these families who travel hundreds of kilometres to the hospital and often cannot afford the transport, medication or treatment. Located just 50 yards from the Apeksha Hospital in Maharagama, which has the only pediatric oncology unit in the country, this state-of-the-art 6-story facility is a free of charge home away from home for children with cancer to live with their families. Every aspect of the project, which comes under the Indira Cancer Trust, is geared towards promoting physical, emotional and psychological healing for these children, adding a sense of relief to the families who live through a nightmare every day. Are robots taking over? In South Korea, an android robot named Ever 6 took the conductor's podium last week to lead a performance by South Korea's National Orchestra. May 2009 is when the civil war that ravaged Sri Lanka for nearly 30 years ended. It has been 14 years. Looking back, what has changed? Were the root causes ever addressed? Have we embarked on peace building and reconciliation? Researcher and author Sara Kabir has been on Kaleidoscope before and has delved into some complex cultural contexts. In her book Voices of Peace and in her research work, she had discussions with war victims, military personnel, rebel groups, refugees, public and private organizations, as well as international and local NGOs. And right now she's working on a documentary project, Project 72. So Sara, welcome. Good to have you on the show once again. Now it's been 14 years since the civil war ended in Sri Lanka. What narratives have you noticed that haven't changed?
I think the obvious one is the victor's narrative. I think as we saw in May earlier this year, there was still that sort of flamboyancy in the way we sort of celebrate the end of the war. It's still very much a very one-sided, polarized way, right? And I think of the narratives that have sort of been sustained for the last 14 years, it's this idea that we've won without an acknowledgement of the fact that this war was fought between Sri Lankans and there was really no victory when you think about it, when you actually really sort of empathize with the parties who were involved in the conflict.
How do we change this?
This time, when I saw what happened in Viharamadevi Park with the Mulivaikal sort of remembrance, and then you saw the sort of victory celebrations, and you're just like, this is so polarized. But what about like a 2-minute silence, 2-minute maybe lights out, light a lamp, where everyone in Sri Lanka comes together and does a small memorial like that. It could be for someone you lost during the war. It could be just about the war. It could be, okay, the war finished, I'm happy about it, whatever it is. But I feel like it's such a simple thing.
You would think that after a 30-year war, a country would veer towards racial harmony. But Sri Lanka hasn't done this. Why?
One is education. When I say education, I don't mean, high level I don't mean it in that way. I mean a simple understanding of our history since independence. What were the root causes of conflict? I think if we were to understand that, we'd be able to veer more towards the, right way of reconciling between the two communities. That is one, and then there's obviously the political how in politics it is used, whenever they need to, you'll see this using of nationalism, majoritarianism. It gets used whenever it's necessary. The best way moving forward, what we can control maybe is through educating ourselves and understanding what the root causes of this conflict was. If we understand that, we'll be able to actually focus on non-recurrence.
What are the major obstacles that stands in the way of reconciliation in today's context?
Understanding why the Tamils felt that some Tamils felt that they had to take up weapons. Why did we push a particular Sri Lankan community to feel that there was no way out but taking up weapons? That is one of the things I think we need to, which not having that understanding I think is an obstacle. And then politics, like I said, and to be honest though, as much as I say politics can also be blamed, I think a lot of this blame can be taken on us as well as citizens, because I've noticed when we ask for the right thing, the politicians do respond in a way. So I feel like if you look at the Rajapaksa dynasty, they were pretty much responsive to what people wanted. They wanted that majoritarianism narrative, and that's what we got. If we want to see a change, I always believe that the change needs to start with us.
Do you think we are ready to tackle racial harmony, so to speak?
Some reason I feel like the last month signals that something is brewing again. So this shows, we can have these temporary moments of, everybody holding hands and feeding each other at Ramadan and all of that, but that is just very glossy on the surface. That's what we saw last year. That didn't mean we had addressed any of our grievances and the root causes of, why we are this way. There is a little bit of hope that the younger generation is not easily, subverted by these majoritarian narratives, and also the whole idea of monks in politics. You can see people are more, pushing against it now. So maybe there is a small positive change happening there. But then again, I feel like it's very easy to fan these flames when it's necessary. And you see that over this month. So I would take the positive we saw last year with a pinch of salt, because I don't think we've done the hard work, the true hard work.
It all started with a shirt that Buddhi and Ranasiri Kirtisena created with the colourful art of wax and dye. That was 52 years ago. Today, Buddhi Batiks has gone beyond that home craft to one that is a true signature of Sri Lankan artisan craft. Looking at everything here today at the Lionel Wendt Gallery, all I can say is that Buddhi Kirtisena was way ahead of his time. Look at this. And I am here at the gallery, at the preview, looking at this journey of 52 years, and I met up with the CEO and Creative Director, Darshi Kirtisena, for a little chat. Darshi, what were some of the revelations you came across putting this 52-year journey together?
I was immersed in parents' work, the team, the craft artisan, and my work also has been inspired by the beautiful work that you see today.
You mentioned that you grew up in this kind of atmosphere. What was it like putting this collection together?
It was very emotional actually, nostalgic, seeing all the work from which I haven't seen for a while, because even this work was packed up in polythene bags and kept aside, samples of my parents' work. So taking them out and looking through them, sorting them was emotional, nostalgic, happy memories of the childhood, relived it. The whole event of putting this up together with Senaka and my brother has been very emotional, but happy emotions.
Seems we're settling into July quite well. Here's to a great weekend. We will see you next week.